We call it the Stone Age. And that single word has quietly shaped everything you picture when you imagine our ancestors. Stone tools, stone weapons. We named the entire era after the one material that happened to survive. But think about your own life for a second. Look around whatever room you're in. Now imagine that in 20,000 years, everything soft is gone. No fabric, no wood, no paper, no plastic, no rope, no leather, nothing that rots. All that's left of your entire world is the metal and the ceramic and the glass. Somebody digging you up would call it the Metal Age, and they would be describing a home you would not recognize because they'd be missing almost everything in it. That is exactly what has happened to the Stone Age. We are looking at a world of soft things through a filter that has deleted every soft thing. And once you understand that, a hidden profession comes into view. One that was very probably the largest single kind of manufacturing in all of prehistory, done mostly by hand, mostly, we think, by women, for hundreds of thousands of years. By the end of this, I think you'll agree that string was one of the most important technologies our species ever invented, and that the person who made it deserves to stand right beside the toolmaker and the hunter. Almost everything a forager owns is soft. The bag you carry your food in, the sling that holds your baby against your body, the net you catch fish with, and the other net you trap birds and rabbits with, the snare on the game trail, the line on a fishing hook, the lashing that binds a stone point to a wooden shaft, which is the only reason a spear is a spear and not two useless objects, the basket, the mat you sleep on, the cord you hang things from, the thread that turns animal hide into fitted clothing. Every single one of those is made of plant fiber or animal sinew, and every single one of them rots. Stone doesn't rot. Bone mostly doesn't. So those two materials survive for us to dig up, and because they survive, they dominate the story, completely out of proportion to how important they actually were. We didn't name the era after the most important technology. We named it after the most durable one. Try to imagine the daily life of a hunter-gatherer and honestly account for how much of it runs on cordage. You cannot carry water without a container and something to sling it in. You cannot carry a surplus of food home without a bag, which means without bags, you eat where you find it, and the whole strategy of gathering falls apart. You cannot fish with a net, trap with a snare, or climb safely, or bind a wound, or build a shelter that holds against wind. String is not a minor convenience. String is the difference between what you can carry in your two hands and what you can carry at all. It multiplies a human being, and somebody had to make it, by hand, fiber by fiber, in quantities that, added up across a lifetime, are staggering. So how do we know any of this if it all rotted away? Because occasionally, very rarely, in exactly the right conditions, a scrap survives. And when it does, it's astonishing. In a rock shelter in southern France called Abri du Maras, archaeologists found a tiny fragment of cord clinging to a stone tool, 3 bundles of plant fiber, twisted and then twisted together, a 3-ply cord, the same basic structure as the rope in your garage. It is around 50,000 years old, and it was not made by us. It was made by Neanderthals. Sit with that. The people we spent a century calling brutish, dim, incapable. They were manufacturing structured cordage, and you cannot make a 3-ply cord by accident. It requires you to understand that twisting fibers one way and then twisting the bundles the opposite way locks them together under tension so they don't unravel. That's not a lucky fumble. That is an understanding of tension and torsion, a kind of intuitive physics held in the mind of a person 50,000 years ago and passed on because a skill like that has to be taught. Go forward in time, and it gets richer. In a cave in the country of Georgia, called Dzudzwana, researchers found wild flax fibers that were over 30,000 years old. Some were twisted, cord, and some were dyed. Black, gray, turquoise, pink. These people weren't just making string. They were coloring it. They cared what it looked like. That is not survival. That is craft. That is a person with standards, with taste, with a sense of how a thing should look, and not merely whether it works. And there are hints that the craft reached heights we can barely see. Some of the famous Venus figurines, small carved figures from Ice Age Europe, appear to be wearing textiles, woven caps, Banded skirts made of twisted cord, carved in such detail that you can see the individual strands and the direction of the twist, which means the sculptor was looking at a real woven garment when they carved it, a garment that itself has completely rotted away and survives now only as a picture in stone, a photograph of a lost technology. We can't see the cloth. We can only see the sculpture of someone wearing it. Here's the strangest piece of evidence of all, and it doesn't come from any artifact. It comes from lice. Humans, uniquely, have two kinds of lice: head lice, which live in your hair, and body lice, which live not on your body, but in your clothing. Body lice are specialists in fabric. They lay their eggs in seams. They cannot exist without clothes to live in. So the very existence of the human body louse is a fossil of a behavior, the wearing of fitted clothing. And geneticists can date it. By measuring how long ago body lice split off from head lice as a separate species, they can estimate when clothing, real, worn, close-fitting clothing that a louse could colonize, first became a permanent part of human life. The answer comes out to somewhere around 100,000 years ago, possibly much more, long before the oldest sewing needle we've ever found, which means people were making and wearing worked garments for tens of thousands of years before they invented the eyed needle, the tool we usually point to as the birth of tailoring. The needle wasn't the beginning. The needle was a late upgrade to a craft that was already ancient. And that craft, turning a dead animal's hide or a fistful of plant fiber into something that fits a human body and holds together and keeps out the cold, is the single reason our tropical species was able to walk into the frozen north and live there. Without the tailor, there is no Ice Age survival. There is no crossing into Europe, into Siberia, over the land bridge into the Americas. A naked human freezes. A clothed one inherits the planet, and the person who made the clothes, who prepared the sinew, who twisted the thread, who worked out how a flat hide becomes a fitted sleeve, that person was as essential to human expansion as any hunter, and we don't even have a word that does them justice. So here is what I want you to do. The next time you see a museum case full of stone tools, or a documentary with a gray-bearded man napping a flint, picture the string. Picture the bag he's carrying the flints in, the cord lashing the axe head to its handle, the net drying by the fire, the fitted clothes on his back that let him stand there at all, the snare on the trail that will catch tonight's dinner while he sleeps. None of it survives, so none of it is in the case, but all of it was there, and most of it took far more hours to make than the stone did. We named an age after the hard things because the hard things are what we can hold. But the people who lived in that age were surrounded, always, by soft things, bound, woven, twisted, tied, and the person who made those things, fiber by fiber, hour after hour, held the whole of daily life together in a very literal sense. The most important profession in prehistory left almost no trace at all, which is, when you think about it, the reason we never learned their name.